The Trans-Saharan slave trade is a critical yet often overlooked chapter in the history of human trafficking. Spanning from the early centuries of the Common Era to the 19th century, this trade route connected sub-Saharan Africa to North Africa and the broader Islamic world. The Trans-Saharan slave trade significantly impacted the social, economic, and cultural landscapes of Africa and the Middle East, and its legacy continues to resonate in contemporary discussions about slavery and human rights. The Trans-Saharan slave trade predates the transatlantic slave trade by many centuries. It began as early as the 7th century with the rise of Islamic caliphates, which established trade networks extending across the Sahara Desert. These routes facilitated the exchange of goods such as gold, salt, and ivory, alongside the trafficking of human beings. The trade flourished during the medieval period and persisted into the early modern era, peaking between the 8th and 17th centuries. The Trans-Saharan trade routes span vast distances, connecting the resource-rich regions of sub-Saharan Africa with the bustling markets of North Africa and beyond. Key trade routes included one western route, originating in the Senegal and Niger River regions. This route passed through the Western Sahara to reach the Moroccan cities of Fez and Marrakesh. 2 Central route. This route connected the Lake Chad region and the Hausa city-states with the Libyan markets of Tripoli and Benghazi. 3 Eastern route. Extending from the Horn of Africa, this route traversed the Sudanese savannas to the Egyptian cities of Cairo and Alexandria. The harsh Sahara Desert posed significant challenges to traders. Camels, known as the ships of the desert, were crucial for transporting goods and people across the arid landscape. Caravans, often comprising hundreds of camels, moved slowly across the desert, navigating treacherous conditions that included extreme temperatures, scarce water sources, and frequent sandstorms. The majority of enslaved individuals trafficked through the Trans-Saharan routes came from West and Central Africa. They were often captured in raids, wars, or punitive expeditions. In some cases, individuals were sold into slavery as a form of debt repayment or punishment for crimes. The prevalence of slavery varied among different African societies, with some communities actively participating in the trade while others were more frequently victimized. The journey across the Sahara was grueling and perilous. Enslaved individuals faced harsh conditions, including limited food and water, exposure to extreme temperatures, and the constant threat of violence. Many did not survive the trek. Those who reached their destination were often physically weakened and psychologically traumatized, reducing their chances of resistance. Enslaved individuals were sold in bustling markets across North Africa, including cities like Cairo, Tripoli, Tunis, and Marrakesh. These markets were diverse, with buyers ranging from wealthy households seeking domestic servants to agricultural estates in need of laborers. Enslaved people were also traded to serve in the military or as skilled artisans. Beyond North Africa, the demand for enslaved labor extended throughout the Islamic world, including the Arabian Peninsula, Persia, and the Ottoman Empire. In these regions, enslaved people performed a variety of roles, from domestic servants and concubines to soldiers and administrators. The Mamluks, a prominent military class in Egypt, were originally enslaved Turks and Circassians who rose to significant power. The Trans-Saharan slave trade had profound and lasting effects on African societies. It contributed to the growth of powerful West African kingdoms such as Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, which engaged in the trade to amass wealth and influence. However, the trade also exacerbated internal conflicts, depopulated regions, and disrupted social structures. Communities that were repeatedly targeted by slave raiders experienced significant demographic changes and social instability. The economic impact of the Trans-Saharan slave trade was multifaceted. For African kingdoms, the trade provided a source of revenue and facilitated the exchange of goods such as gold and salt. In North Africa and the Islamic world, the trade supported agricultural production, urban development, and military expansion. However, the reliance on enslaved labor also hindered technological and economic innovation, perpetuating a cycle of dependency on human trafficking. The Trans-Saharan trade routes facilitated cultural exchange between sub-Saharan Africa, North Africa, and the broader Islamic world. Enslaved individuals brought their languages, religions, and traditions with them, contributing to the cultural diversity of their new communities. Conversely, the influence of Islam spread southward, leading to the conversion of many African communities and the integration of Islamic customs and practices. The movement of enslaved individuals across the Sahara resulted in significant demographic shifts. In North Africa and the Islamic world, the presence of African populations increased, leading to the development of mixed communities. In Africa, the depopulation of certain regions due to slave raids and trade had long-term consequences for social and economic development. The decline of the Trans-Saharan slave trade began in the 19th century, influenced by several factors. European colonial expansion into Africa disrupted traditional trade routes and power structures. Additionally, the growing abolitionist movement, particularly in Europe, led to increased pressure to end the trade. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, European colonial powers had largely suppressed the trans-Saharan slave trade, although slavery persisted in some regions. The legacy of the trans-Saharan slave trade is complex and multifaceted. It left an indelible mark on the societies involved, shaping their demographic, social, and economic landscapes. In North Africa and the Middle East, the descendants of enslaved Africans continue to face discrimination and marginalization. In Africa, the historical trauma of the trade remains a sensitive and often underexplored aspect of collective memory.